This week on Breaking Bullying, we're going to talk about my experience running for school board and if I won. We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is educator Mr. James. Mr. James, thanks for coming to talk to me about my experience, so I feel like I'm not talking about it to myself.
Well, no, I'm glad to be here. Well, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about the experience. I know we've talked here and there, but I know it can be definitely, it definitely a trial, to go
Yes.
through. And I mean, gosh, I haven't gone through it myself, but you never know in the future. So I'm interested to hear everything that you went through to gauge, do I want to go through the experience myself?
I think you'd be fine. So for me, how it started back in December of this past year of 2023, I got an email one day from Elizabeth Hankey, who was a guest on the show back in the spring called, I don't remember what it was called. She was a community advocate. But she goes, I heard your podcast. You should think about running for school board. And I thought about it. I went to LA to do Kim's event at the Energy magazine. Decided that, yeah, I'm not going to run for school board because Elizabeth sent me like this email link with all these dates and like video links to watch of school board meetings. I'm like, this is some controversial stuff. I don't know if I want to get involved with this. So I said no. I didn't tell her no right away. I told myself I'm not going to run. Told my wife I wasn't going to run. And then it wasn't until like March, I was in my anti-bullying committee at the United Way. And the person in charge of the United Way said, well, you want to help kids, right? You should run for school board. And I was like, man, okay, I'm going to run for school board.
Out of nowhere, so didn't know that you had already had a conversation about that.
Well, I can't remember exactly how we got into that conversation.
Okay.
I brought it up. I brought it up somehow, saying, yeah, someone approached me about running for school board, but I'm just going to tell them no. And then she goes, well, you should really do it because, we need people like you on the school board and you want to help kids, right? And it's like, man, okay. And if you know this lady, her name is Barb Kaus. She's really a hard lady to say no to. So she's very sweet and kind. So I started campaigning back in March. So it was March 20th. I found it on Facebook when I first started campaigning, March 20th. And the first of all, when running for school board, Mr. James, I thought it'd be easy. That can't be that political. No one's gonna find out where my beliefs stand at. You're running for a nonpartisan position. How bad can it be?
I guess it can get pretty bad.
It got nasty in October this past month. It got nasty. But leading up to that, so I don't have any experience running for any type of government office. So when I was doing my campaign, I was on the attack mode. I was attacking their policies on anti-bullying policies, how they treat kids. And apparently they don't like that.
No. No.
That's a no-no. And
Of course.
one even told me, he goes, Tim, if you're running for a position to be on our board, you shouldn't be attacking our policies. But I'm like, but they're wrong. I think they're wrong.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. If you're running against someone who's already on there, if someone just wants the same, why wouldn't they just keep the person who's there? Why would they vote for somebody different? If they're going to vote for somebody different, it's because they're coming in with a different perspective, a different approach. That's what
Yeah.
you were offering. That just makes sense. Like, of course you're not going to agree with everything. If you agreed with what they were doing, why wouldn't you just let them continue doing the job that they were doing?
Yeah. They told me you should only be talking about how great you are. And that's about it. Don't attack our policies. I'm like, so my last month, actually end of September, I kept it. I started turning it around to keep it more positive, but that's when all the crap hit the fan. So between March and August, I was the only one out there campaigning. Nobody was campaigning. We didn't know who else was running. I just was getting my name out there. Nothing too serious. And then I started dropping my videos like, this is what I would say if I was on the school board right now. And they really hated that. I took their school board, their school board videos,
Mm-hmm.
and I just took an issue that they're talking about, and then I gave my thoughts on it. So I played it and gave my thoughts on it. And They didn't like that at all. So what the school board did, there was 4 seats up for election. 3 of them are incumbents. So there's going to be a guaranteed one person. And the school board so what the school board did, they wrote a letter to the public saying, we need to vote for these people in order to have a bright future for MAPS, which is Mankato Area Public Schools. And it was me. So they voted for the incumbents and another lady named Tracy. So me, Elizabeth, and Joel, who were the other 3 candidates, were not recommended to be voted for what the school board wanted in their vision of the future. So that
Well,
little letter started.
hold on a second. So they did it as the school board saying it? That is that I don't know. That doesn't sound like that could be
So
completely unethical. As
yeah,
individuals, I could see them saying, look, I support these candidates, but representing the school board itself and saying, like, that
they
seems
got
a little.
yeah. People thought that was kind of weird as well. It could be an open law meeting violation,
That's what
but
I'm wondering. That
who's going to
like that
fight that?
seems it seems at best unethical. At worst, wouldn't there be like some law against that? It would seem, but maybe
It
not.
it would seem, but you know, they did it. So they did that because I think they were afraid of us getting elected. So this letter came out like towards the end of September. And I was pretty after I decided to cool it down a bit, they got me fired back up again. Like, man, I cannot let them beat me, you know. So I didn't go too crazy, but what happened is somebody sent somebody else this whole childish thing started up. Somebody It looked like a Photoshop comment saying Elizabeth said something racial online on a school board post 2 years ago. And you could tell it's Photoshop because if you look at your cell phone, your Wi-Fi bar, your time bar does not sit in the middle of your phone. Either. And if it was a comment, Facebook comments has a gray box behind a comment. So you go on your phone, look at Facebook comments, there's a gray text box. Even 2 years ago, if you look at comments from 2 years ago, there's a gray text box behind it. This one didn't have it. So it looked like somebody faked it. She might have said something like this, but they just took that and typed it up and said it was hers.
Wow.
That started a whole community backlash. And how it got to me was I was friends with her because me and her signed up together to run for school board. I took a picture of me and her together running for school board. All of a sudden, people were saying, I'm racist. My anti-bullying is rhetoric. Don't listen to Tim Flynn. Someone said Tim Flynn's been harassing the school board for a couple of years now with Elizabeth. I'm like, what? I didn't know nothing about the school board for the past ever. I mean, I just learned about school board stuff like in March. I don't know. What are you talking about? A couple of years. All these crazy stories. And I realized how political it got. And then what happened, the Republicans in my area, they didn't endorse me. They recommended me and a few other candidates to the public. That started a whole media thing. I was getting ready to teach class one night. This is like 2 weeks ago. KYC shows up to my school unannounced. Hey, we got complaints from the school board that you're being endorsed by the Republicans. We need
Wait,
you to go on
show that?
camera and talk about that. What's that?
Oh, a news station?
Yeah.
They should. Wow, in the middle of a class, they couldn't wait.
I was getting ready to start the class. I was sitting down. They came at 6 p.m. at night. I was like out of the blue saying they got a concern from the current school board that you're being endorsed by Republicans. We need you to go on camera and tell us about that. I said, well, I can't because I'm going to be teaching class soon. So they came back at 8 o'clock at night when I was done. And we had to talk about it, which actually turned out to be a good thing for me because it made me look better because I was not endorsed by Republicans. They recommended me because they're my neighbors in my business.
Right.
But,
It's
oh my
crazy.
gosh. Then the Mankato Free Press tried to spin a story where they kept saying I'm being endorsed by these political parties, and I'm not being endorsed by anybody.
But
But
even if you were, so what? Honestly, even if you were being endorsed, why would that be a bad thing that you were being endorsed by a party? It doesn't mean that you are endorsing them. They're just endorsing you. It's not like a mutual handshake society, it's like
Yeah,
they're just saying, hey, we recommend this person, or I mean,
that's
well,
all
they
it was.
recommended, like you said, but even if it was an official endorsement, like you don't control who endorses you.
Correct.
So
So
even if they had, I that shouldn't be necessarily a negative thing.
yeah, well, what's funny is it was happening on the Democrat side. They just weren't making that news. So I even screenshotted this conversation I had between someone else to the Mankato Free Press, say, hey, it's happening to these people as well. Where this lady sent me a message saying, hey, a member from the Democrat Party says, I can't have your sign next to a Harris Wall sign. And I go, why? Because they consider me a far right person. And it's going to make the Harris Walz campaign look bad if you have my sign in there. I'm like, we're nonpartisan. This shouldn't matter. So the DNC was going out
That's
hunting down my signs, making sure I was not next to any Democrat signs. But
that's
the Free Press didn't say anything about that. And I had showed them proof that was happening.
but even then though, yeah, okay, and maybe I'm just ignorant on in this area here, but is there a rule that you can't have, even if it was, say, opposing political parties, which of course it's not, but let's take it to the extreme and say that it was. You could have a Harris sign next to a Trump sign somewhere. There's like that happens all the time. Like there's not a rule saying you can't do that. Is there?
No, no. I mean, I'm a
So
nonpartisan candidate. It doesn't
they can't,
matter.
right, but even if you weren't, they still couldn't, I wouldn't think, go and just start removing signs. There's laws against that. But
No,
on
they didn't
top of it,
remove the
you're
sign.
nonpartisan.
They talked to the homeowner saying my sign should be removed because I'm considered a conservative, not a Democrat.
See, to me, regardless of what party would be doing it, right? So even if you flipped it
Yeah.
to the other side, if a political party is saying if you're supporting us, you can't support them. Like, well, if someone should be able to say, for instance, as an example, well, I support I support Harris for president, right? Let's say you support Harris for president, but I support, now I'm going to blank on a specific person, but this particular Republican for governor, just as an example. Well, you're allowed to like cross party lines and pick the individual that you feel is best for that particular position. If a party is telling you, regardless of which one it was, if it was Republican or Democrat, and they're saying, well, if you support us, you can't do this. To me, that should be a sign maybe you're with the wrong party, because if the Republicans are doing, if someone came, I mean, regardless, and I don't want to get into personal politics too much in that regard, but if I'm supporting a candidate and the party for that candidate came over to me and started telling me how I could do it, I'm like, you're not making a good case for your candidate, because now you're making me want to change my mind,
Yeah.
because I don't, everybody should have the freedom to put up a sign supporting who they support, you know. I don't know. To me, that's just sounds so
Yeah.
weird.
So, I mean, so that was
What a weird
crazy.
strategy. But
Yeah. So that was crazy. But then what happened was that going back to that comment that was somewhat photoshopped for that has Elizabeth Hankey's name on it, that fell into me because I was friends with her. And a member of the school board was engaging in that bashing. He basically said I was racist because me and Elizabeth are cut from the same cloth. And I confronted Patrick on that. And he goes, well, it is true. You're endorsed by the Minnesota Parents Alliance. I'm like, Patrick, I can't control who endorses me. You know that. You're a school board member and you can't control how I interpret things. So last week's episode podcast, I talked about him just a little bit because there was this group called Indivisible. I called it Invisible. I didn't realize there was a D in there. Indivisible, which is I call it a hate group now. They said if I was elected, I would increase rates of suicide and bullying.
What?
Yeah,
Wow. That
that's
sounds like
that's
they're I'm sorry, that sounds like a "come sue me" type of moment, like,
well, they didn't say my name. How Patrick's defense was, they said, "Well, Tim, they didn't say your name." I go, "Patrick, they said the other candidates in this race. People aren't dumb. There's 7 candidates. They picked 4, saying if you vote for the other ones, they will increase rates of suicide and bullying."
yeah,
So, anyways,
they didn't have to say your name on that one. If it's clear who they're referring to,
yeah.
that's
So Patrick's argument was, well, they didn't say your name and it doesn't really mean it was you. I'm like, dude, they attacked my platform. I'm the only one that has that platform running for school board.
honestly, that was his moment. That was actually his opportunity, I would think, to rise above that and say, well, "Okay, obviously, that's not those type of statements are not right and not reflect." And he could have said that doesn't reflect my opinion,
He could
you
have.
know, in that he could have risen above that. Instead, he decided to defend it and
He he
use it.
he liked it. He liked that post twice, one with his school board account and one with his personal account. So after me and him hashed it out last week, because he did hear about the podcast from last week, he did unlike the posts, and he's told me I don't like the post. I'm like, well, thank you. You know,
I guess, I mean, after the fact is better than not at all, but yeah,
yeah,
but still. Well, but see, and well, you said he liked it with his personal post, and that's one thing too. If you do that, that's one thing. But he shouldn't have been using in any regard the school board account for that sort of thing, because
correct.
that's that's a see, that's where to me that's some sort of that's unethical, and I don't know if it's an actual ethical violation you know, if there's an official rule for that, but that is to me, that you're crossing lines with that. You can't say that the school board is supporting this. A member of the school board supports this. That's different than the school board as a whole.
Yeah,
You know, that's where I think that's wrong because it's not a private organization. It's a public organization that is representative of the people. So you
yeah,
can't, it's different than, you know, if you took your private organization, Cato Karate, and you're like, okay, we're gonna that because that's a personal or private organization. That's different. When it's a public organization like that, I don't know. That's
yeah,
especially when it's the organization that you guys are competing to represent
yeah,
as well. Like there's several lines there that to me
yeah.
crossed.
And
And
that, yeah, well, that whole
wow,
thing just kicked off a ton of cyberbullying towards me and Elizabeth Hankey. I mean, I never experienced cyberbullying before, but the attacks that was like that weekend, October, spent the first weekend of October, it was nonstop for like 4 days. Attack, 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 attack. These people were out to get us. They were making it known. They were sharing it. People at our Minnesota State colleges, the admissions department was saying I'm racist now, and they act like they know who I am. I mean, they were just coming out full. I mean, at first, this is all new to me. I felt like everybody was against you. Like, what the hell is going on? But once the dust settled down, you look at it, it was about 1,000 people. I mean, it was like small. I
right.
mean, it's like 1,000 people who just had nothing better to do than to, talk some shit about other people to make them feel better about themselves. Because this one lady has some clearly mental health issues. And if you want to see the story, because our newspaper took a Facebook gossip post and made it into a page and a half long front page newspaper. And that the Mankato Free Press made this story a page and a half long out of Facebook gossip. And they did a whole story on it. So Google Tim Flynn and Mankato School Board race gets political. You should see everything there. I mean, it's just insane.
But you bring up a good point though, because that so that if someone hasn't necessarily experienced cyberbullying, you don't get it. And like you said, you felt like it would feel like the whole world is
Yeah,
against
it
you
did.
and
It
stuff.
did.
So you can see how, especially for, well, for a young person, for a kid, if they're experiencing that, that would, and not having the maturity and the life experience that you have, that would feel crushing. You could
Yeah.
see how that could lead somebody to, well, what
Yeah.
we see is sometimes the conclusion on that, where they're
Yeah.
like, there's no way out of this, and where they do ultimately decide to,
Yeah.
that they see the
Because
only way out, and
there was nobody sticking
it's
up for
bad.
us. Yeah, there was nobody sticking up for us online. And to me, I was like, why is the school board violating their own policy? Because this one member of the school board was engaging in this behavior as well. And I was like, how they have a policy saying the school employees cannot get involved in this type of stuff, but why is the school board getting involved in this type of stuff? I just couldn't wrap my brain around it. So that whole
Well,
weekend, it was just hell.
and people are, and that's the thing too. I mean, there were plenty of people, I'm sure, who disagreed, but to be the first person to go in there, that's intimidating, because the first person that was going to hop in there and say, wait a minute, no, this is true, this is ridiculous, they are going to be the next target
Yeah.
of those 1,000 people, like you said. So who wants to step into that?
We did have
So
like
they're like,
maybe one or two people step into that, but they got they felt their wrath and they stopped.
exactly. They start getting trashed, and they're like, okay, I just can't do this and stuff. So yeah, it's hard. So that's where it would feel so over, and where you would say it would feel like it was the whole world, because
It felt
no
like it.
one's
Yeah.
because no one is because to step in on your behalf, that would have felt for them like, oh my gosh, this is gonna feel like suicide doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mean to compare the two exactly, but you know what I mean. They're feeling like like this is going to be a losing battle trying to get in there, and now I don't need them turning, like you, as you said, their wrath on me. Yeah, I'm just going to stay out of this, which is a shame so anybody would have to
Yeah.
feel that way.
Oh, it happened on the it happened on a Friday. It happened on a Friday afternoon, and it carried through the whole weekend. So Monday, people started texting me and giving me calls, and the same for Elizabeth, because Elizabeth actually got worse than me. I was feeling pretty bad. Elizabeth was just getting really bad, but we were getting support behind the scenes. So it took me a couple days to get over it. Now when I look back at it, I'm like, no wonder why we can't really get a handle on bullying in schools, because the school board does it.
Top down, it really is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I talked to almost every member of the current school board so far this past election. And with Patrick, he, I don't want to talk bad about him, because honestly, last week he did reach out to me, wanted to talk because he saw my podcast last week and I did say his name. So I give him props for stepping up to meet with me. I said, sure, let's go ahead and talk it out. So at the same time, our conversation ended like, well, you're you think you did right, I did right. No, we're not going to agree on anything. How are we going to move forward? Because it became like, well, you did this, you did that. And really what I did was attack our policies, and they didn't like that. So if you're run for school board, don't attack our policies, say everything's great, and say, just vote for me because I'm super. Vote for me because I'm Mr. James and I
Right.
own wrestling.
Well, that's the thing. So much of it is, there are, of course, there's going to be policies if it's, if there's something specific, and I'm totally with you on the anti-bullying thing. There's far too much bullying going on, and unfortunately, the policies that are in place with the schools kind of almost encourage it and discourage anyone standing up against it. Right? It's built that way, so it almost protects the bully more than it does the victim, and which is a shame. And I know they don't necessarily design it that way, but if that's your end result, then you got to look
Yeah.
at, okay, we need to change the policies then. And so it was brought up to me, because I've been thinking about, you know, getting involved, and someone said, well, I should go for the school board. I work in education. Wouldn't that be
You
the way to
should.
go? but I know exactly where they would go, is after uh my stance on school choice, and I support homeschooling. It's not a bashing of the public school system, but if the public school system were able to be improved, you'd have less people looking to go to homeschooling. They would
Yes.
be looking for those alternatives. So my goal ultimately is to help make our whole education system better, and so that every child has a place where they fit.
Yeah.
And that's where I would be from. But I know exactly what they're going to do. And I've
Yeah.
seen it before. Like, I'll comment on something here and there, and someone would reply, "Oh, you're just a homeschool shill." Well, no, I support homeschoolers. I have a lot of students that are homeschoolers, but I have lots of students that are also in public schools. So
Yeah.
just because I call you out on spreading misinformation about what homeschooling is, doesn't mean I'm a homeschool shill. It just means, no, there's viable options everywhere, and we should all be looking at where everybody should have the freedom to pursue the best option for their child.
Yeah.
And that should be universal. If we all want the best for children, why wouldn't we want the best option for each individual child? But to me, that just seems
Correct.
like common sense. So, but yeah, I know that I could see where some of where they would go for it and stuff. Then
Well, they had to defend their bullying policy. So, because since I brought it up this election, the reporters would ask school boards, "Well, tell us about your bullying policy. What's about it?" So what they said it was Liz Ratcliffe. She goes on record at just one of the forums last weekend. She's saying, "Well, Mankato has one of the most strongest and aggressive anti-bullying policy out there." I wasn't at this forum like, I had a guest named Ron Sheely back in May who read my anti-bullying schools policy without looking at my anti-bullying schools policy because it's the same policy they have out in New Jersey because it's a universal policy that every school pretty much has. It's not aggressive. It's not different. It's generic. So the school board just lied about what they had. And, so I told Patrick last week, well, we'll find out. If bullying is an issue, I'll get voted in. If it's not an issue, I won't get voted in. That's just how it's going to go. So, but yeah, we'll talk about the results here in a second. But as far as you want to run for school board, I think I would encourage. I mean, honestly, it was an experience. I mean, I met a lot of cool friends. I've met a lot of new friends in the community. There was a lot of backlash I took, but one thing really interesting was, as I found out during that week of cyberbullying, I found out who my true friends were because I found out there's people in my circle at this one not-for-profit organization that don't like me. I found out there's some friends who really don't like me because they all talk bad about me behind my back. And it just so happened that Patrick Baker told me about it. I was like, wow. So I have no hate towards Patrick Baker. So if you heard my podcast last week, he did reach out to me first. He wanted to clear things up in the air. So big props to him because he's trying to now we're trying to become friends again, or not really become friends, but just trying to bury the hatchet. So get past it. And I think we have. But
gotcha.
running for
Yeah,
election, I realized who my true friends are, who really weren't my friends. They were saying shit behind my back. And
that's
the fact that came from some of these groups I work with that we talk about certain serious issues still shocked me. I'm like, and what's funny is I went on Facebook and I found out who that person was because mutual friends. It was so easy. So I'm like, yep, I know who that was. That's pretty sad, but it makes them feel better that they got some dopamine kick out of that.
that's
Whatever.
that's a shame. I don't understand the whole concept of pretending that you're supporting somebody or you're friends with somebody when you're not really. Like,
I mean, this person wasn't my close friend at all, but they're in this group that we're all trying to work to better kids. And so that person who was telling things to Patrick was backstabbing. But then I had my Facebook friends who I've actually known these people for a long time. In fact, this lady's husband, I used to have him come do work for me at my house, and I thought me and him were friends. Turned out that was a sham because his wife, and I think he started saying stuff about me. And I only found out about it because people were showing. Um, well, actually, what I did is I locked down my Facebook. I was saying, if I see a screenshot, I'm gonna figure out who did it. 'Cause it's not
Right.
that hard. So I went back to the person who's sharing all this stuff, clicked on mutual friends, and then I was able to see one message on her page, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this person, I would never think of it. This person runs like a this woman helps other people. This woman who backstabbed me, who I thought was my friend, she works with people who have alcoholism. She's that kind of person, but yet she's a fake because she started spreading more rumors and lies about me being racist. And it wasn't even like, what are you talking about?
You know, I've run into that where there's it's this weird thing where there are people who are in things and they're genuine about it, right? And then there's other people who do it and it's more of a it's this weird facade, which I mean, I guess as long as ultimately someone's benefiting from it, fine, they're helping people, but they're doing it more for their own image or what they want to project out there and
Yeah.
stuff. And then because it's different than somebody else who is out there and uh, trying to do things and they really don't necessarily they're not getting anything, you know, direct out of it. I mean, I'm not going to use myself as an example on
Yeah.
this one because then it sounds like like I'm pointing at myself. But I have a friend and he's Alex, right? So and he will organize all sorts of things for the community because he likes to do it. And there's this perception out there that he's doing this for himself. He doesn't. Everything that he gets, even if there is a little bit of, profit out of it,
Yeah.
let's say, that is automatically donated. So he makes nothing off of that. He doesn't even put himself out there as the person doing it. Now, people find out, but then they try to use that attack him. And I'm like, he's not looking for attention on this. And he truly is not keeping, like, he's not making anything on it. He just wants to create cool things for the community
Yeah.
and to benefit people. So he donates it for scholarship funds and whatnot. Like what he's doing is good things. But then you have other people who they're they do it, but people are going up, shaking their hand, glad handing them, and you know, you know, look at what this person did. And if it's for political clout or just because it helps their reputation, you know, I think that there's a difference, and you can sometimes tell someone who's saying, who keeps throwing it out there. I do all this, and look at me, versus someone who's you know doing things behind the scenes. I have plenty of the look at me moments,
Yeah.
but I don't do it as a look at this program I do for free that I have lots of expenses on, but you know, I'm not going into how much money did I lose on that to do it, right? I didn't make any money on that. I'm not going to point that out. That's, to me, that's not that's distasteful. But there are plenty of people who will do that type of thing just to point out how good they are. So there's lots of people who out there who, you know, do things for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
and so ultimately, I think you gotta look for the people that are doing it because they're genuine.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are doing it and they're doing it and maybe, you know, contrary to outward appearances, they're actually barely keeping their head above water, but they're still out there doing these good things for the community
Yeah.
and stuff.
And we need people like that. You gotta try to avoid the hate.
Yes.
You gotta be able to do it. So even right for school board, would I run again for school board? Hell no. We'll never do it again. No.
You're not that's not encouraging me to do it, but
But no, well, but I went through it once, but I didn't really want to do it. I was talked into do it,
nice.
and I felt like I once I figured like, okay, I can do this. I didn't like the attacks. I didn't like putting myself out there because I had so much publicity this past month. It was way more than my publicist could ever give me. It was way too much, and it was trying to become negative publicity.
Mm.
So, but if I could go back and do my campaign over again, I probably would still run the same way because I still back everything up what I did. I probably went a little too heavy. Maybe I could have toned it down a little bit with attacking their policies. They didn't like that. But at the same time, it's like, but people needed to hear that stuff though as well. But we also need people though who can stand up to these people because what they try to do to Elizabeth Hankey. I mean, I was attached to it, but I didn't get the brunt. I didn't get as much hate as she got. Her name was thrown out there like basically her name became like Donald Trump. So you're one of those people who are gonna vote for Elizabeth Hankey now. It's like that's her stash you got in town. Like if you vote for Elizabeth Hankey, you're racist. That's how her name became in town. But you know what? She took the weekend off. I remember I talked to her a lot that during that time, and she had a lot of people talking to her as well, and people were talking to me because I was getting dragged underneath this. But I won't run again. But I encourage people if you have thick skin, you don't own a business that works with kids, be careful because when you're being called racist and you work with kids and your parents see that, luckily my parents know me pretty well. But did it hurt my business? I didn't get as many new students this past couple months as I normally do. That could have affected it as well. I still encourage everyone, if you can do it, run for school board, fight for your beliefs because the schools, I didn't realize how are like they want to keep their power so badly. They're afraid of outsiders coming in, and they tried so hard not having me get elected, not having Elizabeth get elected. This one incumbent was getting like endorsed by this far progressive Democratic Party, money for Facebook ads. So people were spending money just so we don't get elected, which I thought was funny. I caused them to spend money, which is great. But if you can do it, you have the thick skin, I would say run for it. If you own a business, works with kids, be careful because if you say one thing about the school's policy, these people got connections in town, and some of these people love the school more than what. And if you
That
come and say you want changes, they're going to attack you on it.
well, that's the thing. So I kind of sit there and look at, okay, I mean, I like to think that my reputation, because Mr. James has become a bit of a public figure, locally. So people know they know Mr. James, right? So it's not just like a random name out there. They're like, who's that? Like, oh, we know Mr. James. Or even if I haven't met somebody, they're like, oh, I know you. I've seen you on social media or this, that. So, a bit of a public figure, I guess. And I would like to think that, the reputation that I've built within that world, working with kids and education and STEM programs and stuff would overcome the negative stuff. But I also realize there's a lot of people that'll throw out the negative stuff with fake accounts
Yeah,
and all sorts of, because there's no accountability behind that, that they could just go and start spreading all sorts of things that would be completely untrue. And like you said, if they can
yeah,
just go and Photoshop a comment, well, they could put something on there that I said anything at some point.
yeah. It
Now,
was scary.
yeah, like, and then how do you defend it other than say, no, that's not fake? Well, of course. Well, if you did do it, what would you say? So it's like,
That's how it turned out for Elizabeth. Yes. I
yeah,
mean, I was scared about that. Luckily, that didn't happen to me. Going to results next, we're kind of going up time. The results, there was 4 seats available. 3 school board incumbents were running. The school board wrote a letter saying, you need to vote for our 3 incumbents plus this one lady named Tracy. Otherwise, Mankato Area Public Schools will not have a bright future. They started a smear campaign on us to get us not elected. I came in with 10,909 votes, which I thought was pretty damn cool. Like, wow, there's that many people in my community that actually support me,
Mm.
that love what I do. That wasn't enough, though, to win the election. But Elizabeth Hankey, who endured most of the hate that they worked so hard on running her name through the mud, and so the school board got part of their wish. They got 3 of their incumbents back, but they didn't get Tracy. They got Elizabeth Hankey, who they tried so hard not to get on the board that, you know, but she did, and she's very well qualified because she knows a lot about education. She's worked in the schools. She taught me so much about this stuff. I'm like, Elizabeth, you should be running, not me. And I'm so happy that she won and not me, because if I had to go there by myself, man,
She
this would
has
have been
to
tough.
she's gotta take on the next battle,
Yeah, no, but
being there.
she's not gonna be alone, because, I told her, I'll definitely back you up. And I was actually invited by the, last week, I talked to the chair of the school board before the elections results came out. He goes, "Well, Tim, if you don't win, send me an email, and then maybe we can put you on a board for our anti-bullying, and we'll go from there." So I'm like, "You know what? That sounds
Right.
good. I
Yeah.
probably will do it." So I'm gonna do that instead. So I'll still be a part some way. Just won't have to be on the board part, so which is fine with me.
Right.
So, Mr. James, if you want to run for school board, I think you should give it a shot. Just make sure you have your Facebook locked down. No outsiders can get into and see it. Keep your friends close and be prepared, because if the school board finds you as a threat, they will get their buddies and they will try to shoot you down like they try to do to Elizabeth. And I told Elizabeth last night, good always wins, eventually. So, and she got on.
I don't know. I've contemplated, you know, if I did run for something, I don't know if it would, I don't know if it'd be for school board. So I'm kind of keeping my options open. I've been asked so many times to, run for something and stuff, and I'm like, if I find the right position that I want to go for and the timing is right, then I would do it. But if I'm going to do it, I've got to be, I want to make sure I'm prepared, because if I'm going to do it,
Yes.
my intent is going to be to win. So
Yep.
I'd want to go in there, you know, you know, full bore and be prepared and stuff. But also I would want to do a very it would be a positive campaign. Like try to be above the personal attacks.
Yeah.
Attacking a policy, you should be able to attack a policy. That's a given. You should be able to do that. That's just a difference of opinion. The personal attacks, like, come on, we shouldn't do that. And of course, I'd like to believe people know me well enough that they would see beyond
Yeah.
any any perceived personal attacks and stuff and be like, okay, let's just stick to the policies we know, Mr. James. But you never know uh,
Yeah.
on that. So
You never know who they come up with, and just these crazy people. And people say, "Oh, well, Mr. James has been speaking about this for years." So it's like, I just thought about this a few months ago. What are you talking
right,
about?
exactly, right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been in the back of my head, but it's probably going to be a while before I would make any
Yeah.
decisions on
Just
that.
be prepared to throw your. Doesn't matter what position you run for, your beliefs will come out there, because people will send you questions. What do you believe about this? What do you believe about that? And you can either delete the questions and look bad, or answer them. Or some people are just trying to be trolls, but your beliefs will come out. So you got to be comfortable. They're going to find out what party you are. Even though I'm an independent. I was called a Democrat for part of my election. I was called a Republican for part of my election, all because of where my signs were at. People in my town didn't realize, like, I own a karate school in town. My students took their signs home with them. That's why you saw them in so many different yards. But they just picked one and went with it. And then when the Republicans recommended me, that didn't. I mean, I just started a whole nother shitstorm. Which, go ahead and Google it. Tim Flynn, Mankato School Board, or School Board Race Gets Political in Mankato, Minnesota. You can read all this online or watch the news story online. It's just crazy, but I'm
Was
happy to be done.
So a question though, on the news coverage on it, did you find that the news coverage was rather did they do it with like fair reporting on it, like fair and even
Yeah,
reporting? Did you
it
feel or
was it was interesting because if you watch the first half of that story, they're trying to attack they're trying to bring up the LGBTQ community in that because that's where they were going with it. When it came to me, it was a totally different story. I'm like, no, I work for the community. What they want, that's what I'm gonna want. That's why I'm gonna work for them. So the story doesn't really make a lot of sense. So if you watch it, you can go online and watch this right now. It turned out to be a 2-minute commercial for Tim Flynn for Mankato School Board eventually. So that backfired. And the Free Press article, which is a full newspaper page and a half, top to bottom, flip it over, other half page, was the worst piece of journalism I ever saw. And the Free Press thought it was the best piece of journalism ever. It's hard to follow this story because it goes from one topic to another topic, back to another topic, back to this one guy has been criticizing Elizabeth Hankey on policies on Nextdoor app, which I thought was funny, high schoolish. And then Tim Flynn does this, and Tim Flynn just says that. And it's like they tried so hard to get me and her not elected. At the end of the day, they got out of between me and Elizabeth, they got the best one. Elizabeth Hankey ain't gonna put up with any shit on that school board. So I'm so proud that she got in there because you can't push her over. She's a very good debater. She's a strong critical thinker. I mean, so I was so happy that she got on. So
that's awesome. I mean,
yeah,
that's good. I mean, it'd been great if both of you were on there and because then, there's being able to support each other and having that person next to you doing it would be nice, but at least getting one person on there who's fighting the good fight, so to speak,
yeah.
is worth something. So that's good.
Well, and I told Elizabeth, you got us to back you up, because at the end of the day, the community dictates what the school board should be doing. If she has a problem with something, she can come to us. We'll step in and we'll fight as a team. So, um, overall, great experience. I don't regret doing it. Will I ever do it again? Hell no. I did my one thing. I like to, as a business owner with kids, you want to try to stay out of politics. If it wasn't for the politics getting involved, I probably would run again, but the school board just tried so hard to keep us out. They just started making up stories, and yeah, I just don't. I'm not a political guy. You see me on Facebook. I don't post anything political. They made it sound like I was the most craziest right wing person ever. And I'm like, dude, look at my Facebook. I don't talk about politics at all. But that's according to them, I do. So whatever. So yeah, but I encourage, try it, give it a shot, expect hate. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So,
We'll see. Maybe we'll see if it's in the cards for me.
all right. Well, this is going to be my last podcast episode for till about 2 weeks. I'm going to take a break because I got to get caught up on business stuff now.
There you go.
Mr. James, I want to thank you for coming on. And if people want to learn more about you, Mr. James, where can they find you?
Oh, well, I mean, they can find me on social media. It's Mr. Facebook, Mr. James does it all. But if they're interested in looking at our education options and stuff, include education, two words together to form one word, only one E in the middle. Includeeducation.com, and on social media, same thing. So,
All right, Mr. James, thanks for coming on. Let me share with you my story in person. So it was
thank
great.
you for having me. Always a pleasure.
You bet. Have a good day, Mr. James.
Thank you.
And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. Now, if you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. And other online resource is www.pacer.org/bullying. Now, if you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.